Hey guys, welcome back to the studio for another episode. Last week, we went over how I think about and practice major scales over the whole register of the guitar. In that episode, I mentioned that I think small one-octave scale patterns are some of the most useful things to know when you're learning to improvise. Today, I'm going to show you guys how to use those little scale shapes to practice playing through the harmony of a standard tune. Our goal today is really about learning to play across movements of chords and to learn about strong resolutions, rather than just thinking about what scale do I play over this chord. We'll first learn how to practice a simple scale exercise through the chord changes. Then, I'll teach you guys an interesting chromatic scale concept courtesy of the master, Barry Harris. Finally, we'll learn how to put these two things together to make phrases that sound like they fit the harmony, and then practice taking those ideas through the chord changes. You guys ready to play? Let's get started. The tune we'll be looking at today is probably one you guys are pretty familiar with already. We'll be using the chord changes from Duke Ellington's Satin Doll as our case study today, since I think it makes a really great introductory standard for budding improvisers, but also because it illustrates the concept of a 2-5 in a major key exceedingly well. Before we get into the scale exercise, though, we need to lay down some ground rules and understand a few key things first. If you've been hanging around here at the studio for any length of time at all, you've probably heard me talk about making sure that we land right. Remember, that means we need to keep the chord tones landing on the beat in our improvisations. When it comes to playing scales on tunes, here's the simplest way that we can go about doing that. If we get a short 2-5, in other words, where the 2 and the 5 both happen in the same bar, we should only play the scale for the dominant ascending to the 7th. This keeps us landing with the chord tones of the dominant on the beat. Now, don't worry about the 2 chord at all. Remember, it's kind of a suspension on the dominant, so anything we play from the dominant scale is going to fit just fine over that chord as well. The same rule can apply to any chord that lasts only for 1 bar. Use the scale that fits the chord and ascend only to the 7th. That way, all the chord tones will land on the beat. However, if I get a long 2-5, where the 2 and the 5 both get 1 bar each, then I should ascend to the 7th and then descend to the root like this. This also keeps chord tones landing on the downbeat, and makes sure to keep me landing right. Now, there is one moment in this tune that we have to do something a little funny. At the end of the first A section, we get this chord progression, where we play 1, and then 3-6, dominant 7, to get us back to the top. Technically, I can treat all of this like C major because the E minor 7 is in the key of C2. But that A dominant kind of throws a wrench into things. Well, the way to deal with this is actually kind of simple. For this section, I'm going to treat it all like C major, but then just resolve to the 3rd of the A when I'm descending like this. Now, let's use these rules to play through the whole tune using only 1-octave scale shapes. I hope you see what I mean now when I say that 1-octave scales are some of the most useful things to know when you're learning to improvise. We can already hear the harmony of the tune by just playing through using the scale rules that I showed you. I bet you're noticing, though, that there's something missing. It sounds like we're playing the tune, but it still kind of just sounds like we're running scales, and you should know by now that scales do not equal jazz. Well, the missing element here, one of them at least, is chromaticism. In the previous exercise, we only played the scale notes and nothing else. whereas most jazz solos, especially in bebop, make liberal use of chromaticism. The reason we do this, in most cases, is to make sure that the chord tones land where we want them to. Now, there's a lot of different ways to go about adding chromatic notes to your scales and a lot of different concepts as to how that works. But for my money, I think the most effective and brilliantly organized one of these comes courtesy of the master, Barry Harris. Now, when I say the words chromatic scale, I'm sure most of you are going to default to just thinking about the chromatic scale, which is where we just run up all the half steps in order from any given starting point. Barry's chromatic scale concept hits a little different though. You see, like all things in jazz improvisation, this concept has a purpose, and that's to make the right notes land on the beat. In this case, we want every scale note from the major scale to land on the beat. See, if I play the chromatic scale normally like this, I'm all right at first, but things start to go awry after I get to the major third, and then the scale notes aren't landing on the beat anymore. Well, here's what Barry says to do. We can actually sidestep the fourth like this. Then land on it at the next downbeat and continue running up chromatically to the seventh like this. Once I hit that major seventh, I get the same problem again. I need to put something between it and the root so that the root lands on the beat. Again, Barry says just sidestep to the second and come down so that the root lands on the beat. Descending, we'll do it like this. Again, this is to make the notes from the parent scale, in this case that's major, all land on the downbeats. For Satin Doll, we need 5 major scales: C, D, G, G flat, and F. And we should practice running through this chromatic concept for these major scales so that we can be ready to add in half steps wherever we end up needing them. Here's all 5 of those chromatic scales for you to take a look at now. Now that we've gone through a simple scale exercise and learned how to add some chromaticism to those scales, let's see how we can put all of this together and play through the changes in Satin Doll. One of the best ways to use these things is to write out a couple of phrases and then take those through the chord changes. I've written an etude for you guys that does just that, and I'll play it for you at a medium tempo so that you can get an idea of how I'm using these concepts to make some simple lines. Obviously, some of these are going to sound pretty academic in nature, and I wouldn't play most of them in an actual improvisation. But remember, the idea here is to use this as like a jumping off point, so you get to hear the resolutions between the chords and learn how these types of lines flow on the guitar. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to learning how to effectively improvise, so we should always be striving to combine different things. Licks that we learned in transcribing, these concepts, pivot arpeggios, standard phrases, and bebop language, all of it, in order to start crafting natural sounding solos. Then, when you go to actually play and improvise, you want to be able to rely on this training and your ears to play through the changes as convincingly, hopefully creatively, as you can. Now, let's check out that etude. hanging out here at the studio with me today. I hope you guys have a better understanding of how to actually make scales sound like the chords that we want to improvise over when we're playing tunes. I remember when I was first learning to play jazz, I was thinking about practicing scales on tunes all wrong, since I was thinking about each chord individually instead of learning how to make scale-based lines move across the chords and resolve properly. Did you guys have a similar struggle when you were first starting out? Let me know down in the comments if this video helped you out. I really appreciate it when you guys leave me feedback. As always, if you guys did find this video helpful, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to hit that bell icon so you don't miss an upload. I've also got a Patreon page that you can check out if you want to get your hands on the written material from these videos, as well as some great monthly bonuses for patrons only. Thanks so much to my wonderful patrons: PH, Trent Taylor, Cedric, Josh, Paulette Christopher, David Zuckerbraun, Francis Rue, Chris Crisley, and Patrick Caron. An extra special thanks goes out to Jazz Luminaire patron Bebop Babdi. Thank you all so much for being a part of the studio and for helping to make these videos the best that they can be. Thank you to all of you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.